I just want to put something out there. And that's I'm sometimes a little bit strange, or, well, maybe odd is a better word, or just different. Because we're all PhDs, right? And I've talked with a lot of PhDs. It's a pretty solitary profession. You do a lot of research on your own until the time comes where you need to share your knowledge with the world. And that can be through presentations, through teaching, through writing articles. But when the time comes, then PhDs are afraid. They are mortally afraid of what's to come. They avoid all these things. And I'm totally the opposite. In fact, I do whatever I can to teach, to write, to present. In fact, that's why I'm here. And that was very interesting. And I want to give you a few examples of that. For instance, teaching. I mean, I've talked with some PhDs. When you talk about teaching, about giving a lecture in front of this huge lecture hall, they're already looking afraid, like, oh my god, please, not me, take him. And, well, with me, I actually requested teaching. This is me at the second year bachelor course, Control Theory and Mechanical Engineering. It was a lecture hall with 400 students. It was recorded online, so a lot of people looked at it online. And I loved every second of it. Or what about writing, for instance? I mean, writing isn't so bad, actually. You can write an article. It's actually sending your writing somewhere that PhDs are afraid of. You can send it to your professor, and you will get it back with all these red scribbles. But the professor isn't the worst of it. Your professor is actually quite nice. When you send it to a journal, then the reviewers can often kill you. PhDs are definitely afraid of sending stuff to journals. With me, well, I'm afraid of journals. I'm not afraid of writing. Last year I wrote a book on ultimate frisbee. That's the sport I'm playing. It's a book that teaches players how to become a trainer. Oh yeah, that's me, by the way. In my spare time, I like to throw around the plastic. I told you I was a bit strange. Or what about presentations? Presentations are the worst. PhDs, when it comes to conference presentations, they are mortally afraid. It's like when there are so many people staring at them, they'll think they'll die. But me, last year I got the chance to present at the opening of the academic year. And that was at the auditorium here. The hall was totally full with first year students. There were some staff members too, some professors, maybe an even occasional conrector, I don't know. And, okay, it was a short presentation, it was only 2 minutes. But I loved every single second of it. So, I found out that I was different. And I started to wonder, why is that? Why are all these PhDs so afraid of getting out there, showing themselves to the world? So I started to think, and in the end, I found an answer. And I didn't only find an answer, I also found out why I wasn't afraid, or at least less afraid. I'm not going to say I'm totally unafraid. I'm not. And the answer was that there were key events in my life that changed me. These events, they taught me certain lessons. And what I want to do is tell you about these events that shaped me, tell you about the lessons that I learned from them, and teach you these lessons as well, so that hopefully you can grow to like presenting, writing, teaching, just like I do. I hope you will like it so much that you will go out to the world and do that whenever you can, that you will get so eager at it that you'll also eagerly mess the whole thing up. That's my plan. Now, before I'm going to continue, I first want to get one thing off the table. Sometimes people, they come to me and they tell me, Hilda, you've got these people skills, you must be born with them, you got to be a born presenter. And the first thing I do is I facepalm. Like, no, that's not the case. To convince you guys of that, I'm going to tell you a bit where I came from. Now, this is me about 20 years ago. I think I know where the affection to flying things come from.
20 years ago?
I was expecting that comment from the girl corner.
Just giving a hint.
Okay. So for the next one, you can have it. Now, one thing struck me when I saw this picture is like, who the hell am I throwing with?
Yeah.
Because there's no one around. I mean, my father's taking the picture. And the interesting thing is I'm not throwing with anyone. I'm just throwing the frisbee, figuring out how it works, running after the frisbee, throwing it again. That's what I love to do. I love to just play around with something myself, figuring out how it works. Of course, I could throw it to someone else, but then I would really have to hope that you would throw it back to me. There are all kinds of social procedures around. I don't want to do that. And, well, this continued for most of my youth, and my parents were already getting worried, like he's never talking to people. One change came when I was 8 years old. I had a birthday party, and I invited the entire class over to my birthday party. My parents were all happy, like, oh my god, he's making friends. Well, actually, it was different. you see, in the Netherlands, when you have a birthday party, everyone that comes has to bring a present. Yeah, you're getting it. The more people I invited, the more presents I got, the more toys I got, so I had to endure the entire birthday party, and then I had all these new toys to play with. That was who I was back then. When I was 12, I played a lot of sports. This is my sports team for a sports called korfbal. It's a typically Dutch sport. And you see, there are 4 guys, 4 girls. That's the team. I am the shortest one, indeed. It's alright. And the thing that's interesting about this sport is that there are guys and girls in the team. Guys can only defend guys, girls can only defend girls. And that offers for a lot of interesting strategies. Guys and girls, they really have to work well together to score points. And I love this game. I was very good at it. I love the strategy, how to work together with the girls to score points, which was awesome. There was one problem. Off the field, I didn't even dare to talk with the girls. Yeah. So...
Born to be a nerd?
Yeah, no, you know that show The Big Bang Theory? They've got this guy called Raj. He cannot talk to girls unless he's had alcohol. I was like that, except alcohol wasn't an option. I was 12. So in general, people were just totally frightening. And that also showed a year later, my mother was sending me to the grocery store to get some grocery things, and I had this list. I had found all the items except for one, and I just couldn't find it. So yeah, what does normal people do? So you go ask someone. Well, not me. I don't see why anyone would do that. It's a lot more fun to just walk around the store, try to memorize every item, and see whether it's there. Now, eventually I'd memorize the entire store and figure out that my item wasn't there. So I made a comparison of all the items, which one was most similar to the item I needed to have, and I got that. It took me 1.5 hours. So eventually I came back very proud of myself, and I told my mom, "Mom, I got everything you asked for." And she got angry at me. I was like, "I got everything you asked for. You've been gone for 2 hours." Yeah. So I think I've convinced you guys now that back then, I was more shy than any of you are right now. Because you guys came here to a hall with a lot of strange people listening to this strange guy speak. I wouldn't have dared to do that 10 years ago. In fact, I wouldn't have seen the point of it in the first place. So that's who I was back then. But now the question is, why are PhDs so afraid of getting out there? And that's a question I can answer, because I was there 10 years ago too. In fact, 10 years ago in high school, I wrote a book. It took me 2 years to do that, and it was huge. It's called Secrets of Lost Generations in English, and I loved just writing it. I loved it to see it get bigger. I loved to develop the storyline, the characters, and everything. And in the end, I finished it, and the question was, what am I going to do with it? You know, I always had this dream of becoming this great writer, this great author, but I didn't even dare to let any of my friends read it, because they might just say something which might crush that dream. And I definitely wouldn't send it to a publisher, because that dream that was so fragile, but so important to me, that I didn't want to do anything that might shatter the whole dream. So what I learned from that is that we want to hold on to a dream, afraid to find out that that dream could never be true. That's for writing. Now what about teaching? This is 7 years ago. I had a group of friends. We were teaching physics to students, preparing them for their final exam. And it was the best job ever. It was May before the exam. It was nice and sunny. We had this class of students, and it was just the best time ever. We could have fun with physics, fun with the students. And they were making such good progress. They were making questions, and every time they had a question, they could raise their hand, we would come over, we would help them, and to them, we were the heroes. We knew everything there was to know about physics, at least that's what they believed. Until there was one day where, well, I'm not sure what happened, I just stumbled over my words. Every explanation I did, I messed it up. And I could see the image of these students changing. First they thought I was this hero, and now, well, it was changing. And then a student raised their hand, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Tom, can you go? Go for it. I'm staying back. I realized that if I would go there, I would lose that image. I was afraid that they would think less of me because I would mess up the presentation. When you're teaching, you're always afraid of messing up, and that the image that students have of you, the image that you're this smart guy, that will disappear. That's something that I found out there. We want to hold on to the image that others have of us, instead of risking a change. Now, for presentations, that's actually similar. Except with presentations, it's all a lot bigger. Yeah, I'm here today. When you go to do a presentation, you're generally nervous like hell. You're afraid to mess up. You're not looking at the big picture. You're not looking at the things you can do with your presentation that you can change, because everything you do is going to be looked at. Everything you do, everything you say will be evaluated, will be scrutinized. Every single screw up you think, people will think less of you. That's what you're afraid of, right? And you don't think about the long terms, you think about the short terms. You're afraid that every screw up will matter. So we fear the big and immediate consequences which even a single mistake might have. We think short term, not long term. So what I found was that why are we afraid? Well, we want to hold on to that dream, afraid to find out that it can not be true. We want to hold on to the image that others have of us instead of risking a change. And for presentations, we fear any big immediate consequences which our mistakes might have. So this is what I found. Now, why do these things not hold for me? There were certain key aspects in my life which changed that. And I want to take you along with that. First of all, I want to look at presenting. Because 10 years ago, I was just afraid of presenting as the worst of you might be. And then one thing happened. There was a study day at my university. A study day means that all the teachers, they get together, they have some interesting presentations, they have discussions, and for the students, it's very nice, they get a day off. Lovely. Except the organization, they wanted one student to give a presentation at that day. It was a very small presentation, they asked me. Why did they ask me? Well, somehow I had accidentally signed up for the student council. Never attended a meeting of it. In fact, I didn't even know it was on there, but they did. And they asked me, like, hey, do you want to give this very small presentation? I mean, it's just after Christmas holidays, it's a day off anyway, so you have time. And for some unknown reason, I said yes. Actually, it turned out that it wasn't a small presentation. It was a 20-minute presentation in front of all the teachers of the entire high school. And to make it worse, it was a presentation about teaching. So I had to give this presentation about teaching to all the teachers of my entire high school. Whoops. Right, so, well, yeah, I started getting worried. The whole Christmas holiday, I was worried. Like, what the hell am I going to do? It was the worst Christmas holiday I ever had. Eventually I called in a friend. He helped me a bit with the structure of the presentation, to get everything aligned, to practice lots. And then came the presentation, and I got onto the stage, and I was nervous like hell, but I had the structure, so that really helped me. And I presented my point one by one, went pretty well, until about 80%, when I just got too nervous. It started to get blurry, I couldn't see the audience, I couldn't even see my notes. I was like, oh god, what's going to happen? And what flashed through my mind was a joke I heard the day before. And for some reason, I started telling that joke. It's like, what am I doing? Joke, right. So I told the joke, had the punchline correct, thank God. Everyone laughed, made a transition sentence, a closing remark. I said thank you, and I stumbled off stage, hoping not to faint. In the end, I sit down in my chair at the back of the audience, and the guy next to me, it was my geography teacher of 3 years ago, he said, Hilda, that was a really good presentation. And I was like, what? What? And then the guy next to him was my English teacher, said, yeah, it was really good. It was structured, you had good points. I loved the ending joke. That was amazing. I was like, okay. And then some guy behind me, it was a new teacher, I didn't even know him. He said, I think it was really good that you brought those points out there. Thank you. And these last two words, they baffled me. Thank you. What? What do you say? I realized then that with the presentation, I can actually help people. I can change people's lives in a way. And the real change actually came the days after, the weeks after. In a class, I actually noticed that teachers were suddenly starting to talk to me. They never really did that. I was always in the back of the class trying not to be noticed. They started to talk with me as if I was among them. And what I realized there is that with a presentation, you can help people, but you can also change people and the way they look at you. And that's something very important that I learned there. So after that, what I did was I looked up every opportunity to present. You know, I went to the university, you often see these ads, like, do you have an idea? Come and present it. And I was like, well, I want to present. I don't have an idea. I'll just think of one. So I went to these presentation contests with these ideas, and after a while I started really get good at it. The ideas were usually crap, but presentation skills, if you have those, you can come pretty far. And I got some really good results out of that. Eventually, through one contest, I got this chance to give a presentation at the academic year. And that was really good, because this was when I was just starting my PhD. In fact, it was my first day of being a PhD. I had to knock on my supervisor's door. Jan Willem, I have this presentation at 3 o'clock in front of 1,500 people. Do you mind if I have the afternoon off? It took me 5 minutes to convince him of that, because he didn't believe it. When he believed me, I was like, yeah, go there, go there. That was amazing. And after that, all the professors saw it, so every time I walked through the corridor, I could say hi to all the professors. It was a really good stage to start a PhD. The best thing, I think, during my presentation career was this presentation. It was the TEDx presentation. I was asked to give a presentation for TEDx Delft, and, well, for those that know TED, it's like the ultimate place to be for presenters. This was an experience. I met a lot of people there. A lot of people, actually, this was the only case in which I really had a good idea. I actually met a lot of people that agree with the idea, that I had very interesting discussions with, and that I still count as friends today. So, with presenting, you can really meet people and change the way they look at you. That's one thing which I learned. Now, I want to continue with writing. What event caused me to write? Well, I already told you I was doing a little bit of writing in high school, but one thing which really changed my writing life around was something that happened in the first week of my university time. I came here to Delft and I had a whole week of lectures. It was excruciating, 36 hours of lectures in a week. Friday afternoon I had off, and I was stuck there in my room. I mean, I just moved to a new room. I didn't have anything to do. So I figured, okay, I have these lecture notes, let's just type them out on the computer. And then a friend of mine sent me a message like, hey Hildo, what are you doing? And I told him, I'm working out these lecture notes. So he said, that's useful, can you send them to me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then he said, you know Paul, he missed the lecture, can you send them to him too? And I think John had the same problem. And at that point I was like, oh god. First week, I already need to send my files to everyone. I'm not going to do that. What am I going to do? I'm just going to build a simple website, put my files on there. It was a very simple website. It had 4 pages, 4 buttons on the side, and I put my lecture notes on that. And 2 weeks later, something strange happened. Some friends of mine started thanking me. Hey Hildo, I saw you uploaded new lecture notes yesterday. Thank you. 2 more weeks later, some random fellow student started thanking me. Hey Hildo, I saw the lecture notes. Who are you? Yeah, I'm Carl. Oh, you're welcome, Carl. A month later, I got an email from someone from London. Thank you for the calculus notes. What? And this inspired me to make these notes as good as possible. I started writing summaries for things, problem-solving guides. Half a year later, I got an email from a guy in Colorado. He told me, I love this community you've built. I want to build something too for my university. Can you help me with that? A month later, I got an email from a teacher in Florida. Hey, we're building a curriculum for aerospace engineering. Can you help me? And then I got an email from a PhD in Canada. He said, I found your summary and computational analysis, and I used it for my PhD thesis. How should I reference it? So here I was as a bachelor student, getting referenced by a PhD in Canada. What the hell? Now this website continued to develop. And, well, this is what it is today. We've got summaries for first year, second year, third year, master, every course of the aerospace engineering bachelor, at least until they threw up the whole curriculum to something else, which I wasn't happy about.
They're still using it.
They're still using it, because calculus never changes. And that's something that surprised me. I mean, there was this one file on differential equations. I spent 40 hours writing a summary on differential equations. And you might think 40 hours, that's a lot of time. I thought so too. But I put it online, and I got reactions from a lot of fellow students saying it was helpful. I got reactions from abroad saying it was helpful. And that wasn't the only thing. It happened the same the next year. So I spent 40 hours on one file, and it helped a lot more than 40 people every single year. And this taught me actually the power of the written word. When you write something, when you write it well, and when you send it into the world, then it can reach a lot of people. Through writing, you can reach people all over the world, year after year. So I already told you a bit about this other project I had. I wrote this book on Ultimate Frisbee last year. I didn't tell you what I did with it. Last summer I finished it, and I decided to send it out into the world. I made a Facebook page for this book. I put it on there free of charge. Anyone could download it. So it started off, I posted a small notice on some Ultimate blogs, and first some people from the Netherlands found it. A few friends of mine. And the nice thing about Facebook is you can see who likes your page, right? So I saw that. I was staring at the computer for 4 hours that evening. First some people from the Netherlands liked it. It spread out through some other clubs, and then one guy from London. London, that's nice. Within 10 minutes, 10 people from London liked it. Next was Belgium. Then someone from the US. Then someone from Canada, Argentina, New Zealand, Korea, and then Uganda as well. I had reached all the continents. Within 1 month, I had reached 40 countries with this book. And a funny thing happened last month. I was in Barcelona in Spain for a holiday, and I figured, well, I'm there for a week. Why not attend a Frisbee practice? Nice thing about Ultimate, it's a very open community. You can just go anywhere and join. So I went to the practice, I went to the trainer and said, hey, can I join? He was like, yeah, sure. What's your name? My name is Hildo. And where are you from? The Netherlands. And then you could see him thinking. He was standing there, Hildo from the Netherlands. And I was like, what was he thinking? Oh, God. Like, you wrote that trainer's manual, right? I'm using that for my youth team. I was like, yeah, that's me. That's awesome. So there are kids in Spain being taught what I wrote last year. And that is the power of the written word. If you write something, if you dare to send it into the world, you can reach people all over the world very easily. That was a very interesting lesson. Third thing which I want to talk about is something else. It's, which one haven't I had? Teaching, right? Just to check if you guys are paying attention. Yeah. Teaching. My teaching career started in high school. Yeah, this was my high school. That is not me. That is the locker which they once tried to shove me in. Anyway, I was in math class, and my math teacher, he was a good teacher, he had this nice teaching method. At the start of the class, for the first 10 minutes, he would explain some theory, and then everyone could practice. If you had a question, then you could put your name on this blackboard, and if you're on the top of the list, you could come to his desk, he would answer your question, help you with your work. It was a very nice method for my students, except for me. I was a bit of a problem student. I was a math geek, of course. I finished all the exercises after 15 minutes, and then I started bugging everyone else. And one day it was very busy, like the list of questions was huge, and I was bugging everyone, and the teacher didn't like it. And what he did was something brilliant. He went to the blackboard, and he added a second column, put my name on top, and told the class, okay, if you have any questions which you think Hildo might solve, put your name on the list, go to him. Now, everyone was laughing, of course, but some friends of mine, they took up the challenge, they put their name there, they went over, and I kind of helped them out. A few weeks later, other people started doing it, like the rest of the class, and 1 month later, suddenly there was this girl that wrote her name on there. It was the girl I had a crush on for the entire year. And, you know, I was pretty shy back then. I hadn't even dared to speak with her in that entire year. Now, she was third on the list, so I was sitting there like, oh God. Yeah, there were these two people before her. I totally messed up those presentations. And then she came walking over, and I was like, is this happening? Oh God. She sat down, she started explaining that math problem to me. And, well, when she started explaining that math problem to me, she suddenly became even a lot more attractive. That didn't help. She started explaining the problem. Then she started saying, okay, I've tried this and that. And then she said, okay, I was stuck here, and these are my thoughts on it. And suddenly she continued rattling on, and she'd solved the problem. And I was just sitting there nodding. She gave me a smile, said thank you, walked away, and I was like, what the hell did just happen? Well, needless to say, second time I wasn't so lucky. She came over, I was nervous like hell. I totally botched the explanation, and she never came again. Yeah. But it did teach me that through teaching, you can get into contact with, well, in this case, cute people.
There's that word again.
Important lesson. Well, this story continues at the university. First year of the university, it was a very memorable week. We had computer assignments. All the students were put into this big computer room. We had to solve problems. And they were math problems, so I was pretty good at it. If you had a question, you could raise your hand and call a student assistant over. They were all sitting there in the back of the room having fun. And yeah, I was good at it. So students noticed, okay, I don't have to raise my hand, wait for 10 minutes until he finally sees me. I can just ask Hilda. And I was getting pretty good at explanations too, so after a while, well, most students, they realized, hey, if you want to get an answer soon, you ask Hilda. It even got so bad that one guy started raising his hand and called Hilda, and the teaching assistant, he was sitting there, he saw that, he raised his hand. Wait, what's happening? What's going on? They were sitting there and they were laughing, and actually I don't think they mind. I mean, I was doing all the work, they were still getting paid. Yeah, but at least it taught me that through teaching you can get into contact with, well, fellow students, like-minded people as well. And that was an interesting lesson. Now this has all been like one-in-one explanations, right? I haven't really done any real teaching so far, and that changed at the end of the year. Because at the end of the year we had the dynamics course. It was the hardest course of the first year, and I had a lot of friends that came over to me and started asking me questions. What I noticed was they were all asking the same questions, and I was like, I can do this in a much more efficient way. So I told them, okay, I'm going to organize a study day, you can all come. I asked a friend of mine who had a big living room, like, hey, can I borrow your living room? And he said, yeah, sure. So the next thing I did was I posted an ad on this Aero Students website, which I had with all the summaries, like, study day, if you want to come, send me an email. One day later, I had 30 emails. I asked the guy, how many people do you think fit in your living room? 30? He was like, 30? Yeah. What I did was I organized 2 study days, one on the first day, one on the second day, kind of distributed them over it. And yeah, this was the living room. Worst positioned whiteboard ever, I must say. But the days itself, I was nervous like hell, so needlessly to say, I prepared really well. They were a huge success. And there was one thing which really struck me at that day. It was the second day, and one guy came, he was a third-year student. He was in the board of the student association of my studies. And that guy was in the board. So in your first year, you look up to the board of your student association, right? I was looking up to that guy massively. He was like the god of my study. And he came over to my dynamics class to get taught dynamics by me. Like, what the hell is happening? So this taught me that through teaching, you can even get into contact with people you look up to. Now this continued. I started teaching more and more, and now I'm a PhD. I'm teaching this control theory course for the bachelors. And one thing which I really like to do when teaching during the break is I walk around the lecture hall. I walk around, I talk with students, and somehow they're all very eager to speak with me. I'm not sure why. Probably it has something to do with me giving them grades. But they're all eager to speak with me, and they're students from all walks of life. They all have different stories, different backgrounds, different intelligence. They're all different. And I love that. I love speaking with different people. And this taught me that through teaching you can easily get into contact with all sorts of people. Actually, this lesson summarizes all the 3 previous lessons. Because, well, in a lecture hall, there are also cute people. Now, the last bit of teaching, the last lesson that I learned is actually not through something academic. It's through something else which I'm doing. Of course, I'm also giving sports trainings. I'm also giving communication workshops, team building workshops. And a few months back, last summer, yeah, Renzi is already laughing because he was there, for my department, I organized a team building event and gave a communication workshop. And this is what happened. Just introduction. This is my professor, this is my office mate, and this is the lady from the secretary. This workshop, what they have to do is they're blindfolded, and they have to discuss shapes in their hands, wondering if they have the same shape. Yeah, I'll explain to you what happened. My office mate, he started saying, hey, I've got this Pac-Man in my hand. Then the lady from the secretary said, Pac-Man, I have no idea what a Pac-Man is, but I've got this cheese in my hand. And then the professor said, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I just have a circle with a triangle out of it. Now, what they were learning is to communicate across cultural differences, across age differences, because they have different walks of life. I think they had a lot of fun. I got a lot of positive reactions. But what I learned was something far more important. I learned that if you have good communication and teaching skills, you can blindfold your professor, have him do silly things, and afterward he will thank you for it.
Great.
That's a good lesson, right?
Yeah.
So, let me summarize. Why is it so much fun to just go and put yourself out there? First of all, with presentations, you can change people and how they look at you. You can help people. And that is an amazing experience. Secondly, through writing, you can reach people all over the world, year after year. And through teaching, you can easily get into contact with all sorts of people. This is why it's so much fun to put yourself out there. And I hope that you guys like putting yourself out there now. But I'm not done yet. I promised I'd make you guys like to write, to teach, and present. I also promised that I'd make you guys want to mess these things up. And I haven't done that yet. You see, when you like to present, you're going to all the opportunities you can to present. And it'll be an amazing experience, I can tell you that. It'll be amazing because you will learn a lot, because very often presentations go well, you get a lot of good reactions, but sometimes they will go wrong. Sometimes you will fail. And that feels bad. In fact, I had one case which really felt bad. You guys remember this book I wrote in high school, right? I didn't tell you what I did with it. After half a year of, well, just thinking and being annoyed with myself, like this is never going to happen, I sent it to a publisher. A few weeks later I got it back. And guess what? Rejected. It wasn't just rejected, it was rejected with this big list of everything that was wrong with the book. It was too long, too monotonous, the characters were unrealistic, and I was insanely angry for an entire week. It's like, these people, how do they dare to just take my dream away? How do they dare to just blow it all up? And after that week I was still angry, and I realized nothing has changed. I'm still angry, I still haven't made any progress. So then I started reading through that email one more time. I started to accept, okay, apparently this book is crap. Why is it crap? I started reading through the list, and all these points suddenly made sense. All these points suddenly made sense. And what I learned here, that when things go wrong, if you accept the situation as it is, then you can learn from it. That's a very important lesson. I have another story about a failure that was at a presentation contest. Now, this was a presentation contest in which I was very eager to go to. It was the final round. I had prepared really well. I gave the presentation was awesome. It was off the hook. Every punchline went good. The audience, they were enthusiastic, they laughed. The jury, they were happy, they were giving me good reactions. I thought the game was in the bag. And then I didn't win. In fact, I wasn't even in the top half. I was somewhere in the bottom half that no one mentioned. And I tried to figure out what the hell happened, and for the life of me, I couldn't find out. I went to the audience, I went to the jury, no one knew. And I got very angry with that. In the end, I just flapped the scene. And what I realized is that when you cannot figure out what's going on, then failures aren't worth anything. When you cannot figure out why things went wrong, you are wasting your time, and then it's not worth being there. When you don't learn what you can do better, you're only wasting your time. But failures, they're actually pretty interesting things. Sometimes they have some very interesting benefits. Last year, I was giving a presentation at a conference, and I needed to show what happens with like a barrier tape or a wind turbine blade or anything when it's subjected to wind. Well, when you have wind, things start fluttering, right? Well, this is one way to explain it. I wanted to do better. I wanted to show it to them. And if you have a wind tunnel, that's very easy to show, right? You just put the wind on, you put something in there, and it starts fluttering. But I was on the stage, and I didn't have a wind tunnel. So I decided to build a wind tunnel on stage. I got this long paper strip. I pulled out a hairdryer. Actually, you don't want to know how hard it is to find a hairdryer in Delft. You figured you just ask a girl. Well, point one, there aren't so many girls, and the girls that are there, they don't have hairdryers. I found one. So I had this paper strip, I turned on the hairdryer, and I was nervous like hell. Because an hour before that, I had tried it out a couple of times, and half of the times it worked, half of the times it didn't. So I turned it on, and I was excited like hell, and I could see the audience was excited too. It's like they were excited because I was excited. And I turned it on, and it didn't work, and then it worked, and then it started fluttering, and I was like, yeah, it works! Everyone was happy. And that was great. And then the next week I had the exact same presentation, and it didn't work. What happened though was I was so excited, the audience was so excited, I told them, okay, normally this should happen, and that's what happens with science, you never know what you're going to get. They all laughed because they were excited, still went well. The lesson that I learned here is that risking a possible screw-up has some really interesting benefits, and is always worth doing. In fact, sometimes it's so much worth doing that it's even nice to look up failures. Last year, I was coaching a team, a beginners team. Yeah, that's my team. We had some really athletic guys out there, so they really picked up the sport really quickly. And what we wanted to do was go to 3 beginners tournaments. These were tournaments for beginners teams. Every team also could bring 1 experienced player, which was awesome because that was me. We went to the first tournament and we won the first prize. It was our first tournament and we won. So we were like, what are we going to do? Now then the second tournament came and we got this idea, okay, Hildo, they said, why don't you just kind of step back and we can just try to go to this tournament. And I knew they weren't ready. So I told them, okay, you can do that, but what happens when you lose? And they hadn't thought about that. So I told them, okay, if you lose, just accept it and learn from it. So they went to that tournament, they started playing well together, and something great happened. They started showing initiative on the field, they started beating teams, they reached the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and then one thing went wrong. And the second thing, and the third thing. Then the whole strategy collapsed, everyone started doing stupid things, and they got wiped off the field badly. Everyone was angry, and I told them, okay guys, we can be angry, but I learned a few years back, if you accept the situation, try to learn from it what you can, that's when you grow. So that's what we did. We started training for these weaknesses that we discovered. Third tournament, the team, they came to me, they said, Hildo, you can stay home, we've got this. They went to the tournament and they won. So what I learned, by looking up failures, you can learn much more than by playing it safe. Last month I asked the team, which of these 3 tournaments was the most important one to you? They all said the second one, the one we didn't win. That's an important lesson. So we had these 3 rules, these 3 lessons. I want to add a 4th one to that. When everything goes wrong, you've still grown to be more than who you were. It's an important lesson. So I think that by now, you guys like to present, like to write, like to teach. I think by now you will grasp every opportunity you can. You will go out there, you're going to do this. That's what I want you guys to take home. That's the message which I want to give you. Go out there and just put yourself out there. I mean, you all have some kind of skill, some knowledge, maybe an idea, or just some spare time and energy. Use it. Go out there, put yourself out there. And I'm not saying that you should go to any random person and force it down his throat. You shouldn't force anything down anyone's throat. You should offer your skills to interested people. If they're interested, if it goes well, you can move forward together. If suddenly they're not interested, then something is wrong. Try to figure out why. Ask them. Because from the people that matter, you can get the best feedback ever. And you can learn the most. But the most important thing, which I want you to take home tonight, is when you go out there, risk something. Try something new, be excited about it, risk screwing up. In fact, hope that you'll screw up, because that's when you learn the most.